Should be our focus. Ephesians 5:25. We're going to continue what we started last week. For those of you who weren't there, I'll do a quick little recap. Ephesians 5:25. Next week is dinner on the grounds. Dennis will not forget that. He is on spot with that one. Last week we covered 16 attributes of Jesus Christ. And I'm going to get to you real quickly on why that matters. Ephesians 5:25 simply says husbands. Now, I know it says husbands, but this is a broad understanding. Men of leadership. Men are in position over, are instructing and supervising those that are around them. Husbands, love your wives even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. Now, I find in today's world we have an issue with men, especially husbands, that do not have a desire to love their wives as Christ loved the church. Somebody asked me one time, would you take a bullet for Miss Annie? I said, what, and put it in the gun? No, because she'd shoot me. They said, no, silly, if somebody was trying to kill her, would you take a bullet for her? Now, I gotta be honest with you, I'd love to say that I would, but I'm not in that position. She would push me in front of it, yes, that's the thing. But no, she would be the first one to try to pull me out of the way, I have to admit. My wife loves me that much. But husbands, are you willing to take a bullet for your wife? And I'm not talking about a physical bullet. I'm talking about a spiritual bullet. We find ourselves in situations where we want to, we desire to, we have this thought that, yes, of course, certainly I would. But the reality is that when you start reading out all the different bullets that are shot and slung at our spouses, we start wondering, well, maybe not so much. We don't live up to that which God has asked us and required us to do. So let me explain a little bit about the love of Christ. Now it says that he gave himself for it, talking about the church. And we are to love our wives like Christ loved the church. But he didn't just give his life. He didn't just give his blood. He gave all the things that are listed. I had 49 points, and I'm not going to cover all of them this morning. Last week I covered 16. We'll go over those real quick. One of his points was alertness. Being aware of what's going on around you physically. Showing the worth of somebody. How often we see our spouses and friends beat down and we're not there to pick them up. Our availability. Our boldness, our timing. Right now, my grass, it looks like a jungle in my front yard. Every time I go to try to start my lawnmower, that joker, he just doesn't want to start. Now, I can't tell you that bothers me a lot. I do go for a second, oh, it doesn't want to start. But then I walk in my front yard and I have to walk through the grass that's a foot high, and I think to myself, I really wish it would start. Our timing is off. A lot of times we don't wait to the right time. We wonder why God has postponed certain things in our life, and our impatience gets the best of us. Our compassion. Do you have compassion for your spouse? Are you contentment? Christ was full of contentment. Are we contented with our spouse? Creativity. You know, God created this whole heavens, earth, the whole world. Right now I'm putting together the Christmas program for the camp. And part of it is the creation. And it just fascinates me and excites me to know how God created all of this and how we fit into that picture. It's really amazing. Our decisiveness in making difficult decisions based on the will of God. Our difference. Dependable. Are we dependable? Are we determined? Are we diligent? That's one that gets a lot of us, the diligence. Do we have the discernment? That's what God gives us, the ability to understand things that happen. We discern. Are we discreet? Do we have endurance? You know, Christ was on the cross. I can just imagine as he was going up the hill, Golgotha, or as he was going through the city carrying this cross. I wasn't there per se watching, but the soldiers got to a point where they thought that he needed help to grab someone out of the crowd and make him help Christ. But I believe that if that was not so, he still would have carried it all the way to where he needed to be crucified. His endurance was amazing. Look, and he was using a human body at that time. He was in a human body. But let's carry on a few more. Let's go 17. Our enthusiasm. A lot of us as husbands and spouses, we lack an enthusiasm, expressing the joy it is to be married, to be saved, to be part of the kingdom of God, to have Christ as our Savior. As husbands, a lot of times, and as dads, we miss that enthusiasm that we should have. Christ was very enthusiastic about serving the church. In fact, he was so enthusiastic that when it came time for him to leave, he rather had thoughts about, maybe I should stick around for a little bit longer. Our faith. Do we show our faith to our children, to our grandchildren? Do we show our faith to our wives? Or do they see the bad side of us? You know, a lot of times people will say, I only save all of that till I get home. You know, you bring your work home with you and stuff. Do we bring our faith home with us? You know what faith is? I know the scripture says well, I just went blank on it. But let me tell you the definition of it. That's visualizing what God intends for you to do. Not only visualizing what God intends for you to do, but also acting on it in his will. That's faith. For example, if that chair, a lot of y'all did not check that chair, you didn't call in an expert to make sure that it was engineered and properly done to hold you up before you sat down. You just flopped in it with the attitude thinking, well, it's going to hold me up. Well, that's faith, because it was something you imagined, and you took the leap to make it come true, and you sat down. Our flexibility. Christ was very flexible when he was here on this earth. You know, we saw that just last Wednesday night when we were watching The Chosen here at the church. As Christ was standing there before his mother, he said, it's not yet my time. And knowing that Christ can't lie and wouldn't lie, it was not yet his time. But his mom says, I want you to do this. And remember, the last thing that we know, when he was a child at 12, he submitted himself unto his mother. And she said, I want you to do this. And he did. He did it. He was flexible. Are we flexible with our spouses? Are we flexible in our walk with God? Are we able to not put God in a box, or not put our spouse in a box? I mean, or we want it to be a certain way, and that's the only way it's going to be no matter what. Let me tell you something. Every time you do that, I can guarantee you, you're going to be outside of the will of God when this is all done. Because if I tell Annie, this is the way it's going to be, I don't care whether you like it or not, do this. Yeah. Uh-huh. Y'all know my wife as well as I do. That ain't going to go over real well. We got to be flexible. This one here, number 20, I really like this one. We got to be forgiven. We have to have a heart of forgiveness. We have a hard time forgiving. Yeah, I know in the we joke about it. I know it's real, but it's kind of humorous. Women don't forget anything. You know, you're having an argument, Brother Dennis. You've probably been in that situation. You had an argument, and you think for a second you're winning it. As a man, you're thinking to yourself, boy, I got this one. This one's in the bag. I'm right this time. This is over with. And then she brings something up from 25 years ago. It happened yesterday. And guess what, guys? The argument's over because she just won. I can't remember 20 minutes ago, so I can't ever do that. But y'all don't forget. And I think a lot of times y'all bring up stuff that never really happened just where you can win. But we need to clear the record with those who have wronged us. We need to learn to forgive because guess what? They're on a spiritual journey also. As long as we're disrupting that spiritual journey between them and God with a lot of negative attitudes and a unchristian-like attitude towards them, it's disrupting their walk with God. I don't even know if I want to stand before God and have to answer for something because I had a hard-headed, unforgiving attitude towards somebody. We need to have generosity and remember that all things belong to God. When we say, well, man, I worked real hard for that. I can't give it to that guy. I know he needs it. I know she could sure use it to feed her kids and stuff like that, but she put herself in that position. She needs to work herself out of it. Well, chances are those children didn't. They didn't put themselves in that position. We're like, man, but it's my money. No, let me tell you something. It's God's money. It's God's property. It belongs to Him. That's where our generosity as Christians and as dads, as fathers, come in. We also need to have, number 22, gentleness. Showing care for those that are in our lives and show a concern for others. We need to have that gentleness. I know that last night my employees reaped the benefits from this sermon. Annie asked me this morning, she says, you didn't fire anybody last night? I'm like, no. You didn't holler at anybody last night? Not really. I was stern with a couple. We were busy and everybody was just kind of disrupted last night. No, we weren't understaffed, but we were just different staffed. And they weren't working well together. And Annie thought for sure, man, I was going to come unglued on them. But the gentleness of God came through, thank God, instead of that attitude of not being flexible and not being forgiving and not being generous towards them. But I was trying to be all that, and I showed the gentle side of Dale. We need to have that air of gratefulness. When's the last time you told God, thank you for the air you're breathing? When's the last time you thanked God for the opportunity to be one of His children? When's the last time you've told somebody, thank you for helping me? We need to have that grateful attitude, that thank you-ness, especially towards our wives that do so much for us, and yet we sit around and we rarely say thank you to them. You might word it, but I'm talking about truly mean it. Thank you. Now, some of y'all sitting out there, I just realized, thinking, what did he do to Annie that he had to preach this sermon? Actually, nothing. I told y'all last week when she was gone, I said, I kind of enjoyed preaching this sermon with her gone because it would sound like she would be the center point of this, but she's not. There are a lot of things that I fail upon when it comes to being a husband. But the reality is that I'm striving towards being Christ-like in my marriage and in my life. And saying that, we need to have humility and understand that I am a sinner saved by grace. I have faults. And when Annie tells me something and I mess it up, which is all the time, I've got to be honest with y'all, guys. You got to give me detailed instructions because Dale is going to mess it up. How many guys in here actually read instructions before they put something together? One? Yeah. So how many guys in here lie? One? We don't read instructions. We look at the picture on the box. That's all the instructions we need. We put it together. Every man in here is an engineer. Every one of us. Till we finish and there's like 40 parts left over of a 42-part project. Our humility is just not there. We think that we can do no wrong. When it comes to serving and living with our spouse, we want to be right all the time, 110%. That's not the way Christ was. Christ came here to earth. You know why he lived as a human for 3 years? It wasn't just to show that he was that he could live a perfect life. Y'all have any idea why he came and lived up to 33 years? He wanted to experience being human. He wanted to see what it was like to be like us. So whenever I have problems and whenever I am in a situation that seems hopeless, he's seen that problem before. He's been there. He notices that you don't have enough money to eat. He's seen it that you may not have the ability physically to walk another mile. He's been there when your family is in straits. We never hear about Joseph after Christ was in the temple at 12 years old. He's not mentioned in the Bible. Some people say he should have never got on to Jesus. When you do that, you disappear out of the Bible. But that's not true. Eventually, Joseph passed away. The life expectancy at that time was about 35 to 40 years old, especially for somebody who would have been a workman, a craftsman with his hands working, and a carpenter, as we say today. He would not have lived much past the age of 35 or 40. So he obviously passed away. So Jesus, I'm sure, experienced death, losing a loved one, somebody that you love dearly. Number 25, hospitality. Brother Dennis, do you get up and get stuff for Sister Beth when she needs it? Do you go above and beyond to please those around you as a Christian? Do you go above and beyond? Do you try to make an effort to be a servant of God? We did servitude last year, all year long. Or do you just say they can just fend for themselves? I can't read my own handwriting. That's why I have to stare for a second, guys. Do we have that initiative? That's number 26. Do we have an initiative to get up and do what needs to be done? I think about it all the time. My grandfather was a couch potato. Now, he worked hard, don't get me wrong, but he was a couch potato. Every time I'd go over to my grandparents' house, he'd be laying on the couch, strung out. He'd have a bowl of M&Ms on his chest, and he'd be watching TV. He was a TV repairman, and in the early 60s, there wasn't a lot of TVs around. But he was a TV repairman. He liked working on TVs. He was good at it. But he also liked watching TV. And he'd lay there on the couch. And that's my memory of my grandfather. It's him laying on the couch eating M&Ms, watching TV. And then there are times that Annie walks through the house. I remember when Zueli was here, and she was, Annie would tell her, watch, Dale will be on the couch, sprawled out with a glass of tea in his hand before we can get into the door, and we all drove up in the same vehicle. And sure enough, they come through the door, there I would be laying on the couch, glass of tea in my hand, watching the television, and Zueli's like, you called it, ain't Annie? Guess y'all already figured out that I kind of emulated that grandfather. I loved him to death. Verse number 27, our joyfulness. Do we show joyfulness, or do we just bring all the bad stuff home? How often does your spouse see that joy within you. Now, one of the best things Brother Dennis ever did, and I know I'm picking on him a lot today, but this is a pat on the back. One of the best things he ever did in my life was when he taught me what joy meant. And that was one of the very first months he was here. I mentioned the word joy, and he says, it's Jesus first, others second, and yourself third. That's how you spell joy. Isn't the English language just amazing? Jesus, others, yourself, joy. Do we have that in ourselves? Does your spouse see that you put Jesus first? Or do they see that you put yourself first? You know what that spells? I don't know. I can't figure it out. But Y-O-J doesn't mean a lot. But it doesn't spell joy. It would have been cool if it would have spelled you, but it doesn't spell joy. Joy is something that we should be bringing home each and every day, and we should be showing the joy of the Lord in us. Number 28 is justice. I guess y'all have noticed that this is in alphabetical order as I go. Justice, number 28. That's our responsibility to God's laws. Do we, and I know I've been there before, do we show our wise guys an example of ungodliness when we say, well, God will understand just this one time? Well, it's just a little white lie. I'll just run this red light one time. I'll just not pay for this one time. My dad pulled out of a TGMY in Orange, Texas. We were on our way to San Antonio. I was about 14 at the time, maybe. I might have been younger than that. And we pulled out of TGMY that we stopped at to get some snacks and stuff there in Orange, Texas. And we got all the way to Houston. We were downtown Houston. I don't know if y'all are familiar with how that is, but back then, I-10 wasn't completely finished, and so it took about 2.5 hours to get there to Houston. We get into Houston, and my dad realized he had stuck a little book in his pocket. He was walking around reading this little book. I don't know what it was about, and without thinking, he just stuck it in his pocket, and he went on, and he reached over there and noticed this book in his pocket. That day, my dad he taught me integrity and he taught me justice because he turned our car around and we went back to Orange, Texas for him to pay for a 10-cent book. And I realized right then that that is the way you're supposed to be. It doesn't matter the cost. It's all about what is right and what is wrong. 29 is a big one, guys. It would have been number 49 if it wasn't for the fact that I'm doing it in alphabetical order, but 29 is love. Love, simply put, is doing for others without looking for reward. It's simply serving God without looking for God to bless you or give you something back. Just doing it because it's the right thing to do and because you love God. You appreciate God and all the things that He's done for you, especially dying upon the cross to give you salvation. Love is huge. I hear a lot of times people say, well, Brother Dale, I'm getting a divorce. Well, why are you getting a divorce? Well, the love's gone. Let me explain something to you. Love's not about you and your wife. Love's about you and your relationship with God. When your relationship with God is gone, let me tell you something. It don't matter who you're married to or what you're married to or whatever. God won't be there. Love won't be there. And it will be a disaster. Oh, some people put on a good front. They may be able to live within guidelines that are set outside of Christ, but it's an endurance and not a joyful love experience. Love is huge. I got two more, guys. Number 30 is our loyalty Are we loyal to our spouse? Are we committed to God? Are we committed to our spouse and our family, even in the hard times? I told y'all before, I have this grocery cart at my house that's in my garage. I got it from some construction job. It was a store that's been out of business, so it's not like I took it from the store. If it would have been a store that was still in business, I'd have brought it back to them. But we got it on a construction job, and in that I got a cardboard box, and I got some covers, and I got I think I might even have some MREs or something. There's stuff stuffed inside of there, and it's there to remind me if I ever get to a point that I have nothing and I have to live on the street, that I'm still thankful to God. Reminds me of what I have, and I'm still thankful to God. It reminds me in my hard times, I will still stay loyal to God. Now, some people say, well, where's Annie's stuff? I got a feeling the reason I'll be on the street is because Annie kicked me onto the street, so she's not going to need all of that stuff.
She's in the park.
Yeah. But our loyalty, where is our loyalty to our wives and family? And not last but not least today, our meekness. Our meekness is giving our rights that we believe that we have over to God. In the United States today, so many people, they preach and they scream and they yell. Look, I'm telling you, it's a religion. It's crazy. It's our right. We have the right to do this. We have the right to do that. We have the right to say what we want to say or go where we want to go. The Bill of Rights came out, and look, that thing, I think it's what, 25, 26 articles in there. But if you listen to the people, there's hundreds. Because everybody's got the right. I got the right to play the piano. I got the right to walk down the street that says no trespassing. I got the right to stop traffic on the interstate. Which, by the way, cute little story right here. It won't take very long. I watched a little YouTube video the other day, and this activist group, don't know what it was about. I have no clue what they were about. But they made a huge mistake because they took a seine that you seine through a pond to get fish out, and they stretched it across the interstate to stop these cars. Going to give y'all a piece of advice. That's not a very good idea to do that. Because the first car that came through drug about 10 of them down the interstate. That seine did not stop or slow them down in any shape, form, or fashion. But we all think we have the right for all these crazy things. And we put so much time and so much effort into trying to please our fellow brothers and sisters on the earth. And I'm not talking necessarily Christians, but I'm talking about fellow citizens of the earth. We spend so much time trying to please them, and we never have a thought of God. Our meekness should be that we stay within the laws and the rules of God. And our rights are His rights. Let me tell you something about God. He created everything. He's all-knowing. He's all-seeing. He's all-powerful. Our rights come because He allows us to have them. God can do whatever He wants, and He doesn't have to ask my permission to do it. My rights fall within Him. When it comes to my house, my wife's the head of the house as far as what goes on at the house. I might be the head of the family, but she's the head of the house. I come into the house. If I decide to do something, what do I say? Can I do this? Because I know this is her domain. This is where she does. And I ask her permission. That's biblical, guys. And I ask her permission. Do you want me to do this? You want me to do that? She says, go clean up your garage. And that's where that timing doesn't quite match up to her timing. But the reality is I'm meek enough to know that even though she builds a comfortable nest for us to live in, that I need to be gentle, loving, understanding, and joyful about what she provides. And I am. I grew up in a place, my mom, she wasn't very neat. She wasn't dirty, but she wasn't neat. And a lot of times she would, I would say, "Ma, is this okay? Is that okay?" And stuff like that, because I learned it from my parents that I'm supposed to ask permission. And my mom would always say yes. She never told me no. We had organs and pianos and guitars and drums, all that in the living room. And now that I think back on it, I'm like, man, that had to be some type of aggravating. But my mom was very meek about it, and she loved her children, and she would say, you know what? If this is going to make a joyful noise unto the Lord, I want you here. I want you to do it. Sometimes I think back and wish that I didn't do that, but because of that, I'm able to play the piano on Sunday mornings. Because of that, I'm able to serve God. Because of that, I'm able to be forth. And that's all to do with my mom. You can go ahead and